Hey, everybody. It is Thursday, April 29th, 2021. We are watching David flee from Jerusalem from his son Absalom. My name is Bria Doan. This is Fit Your Ministries, where we go through the Bible chronologically one day at a time in the year 2021. Y'all, we're going to be reading today about a father running for his life, essentially, from his own son. So as you listen to the scriptures today, I know we all can perhaps attest to the people closest to us, the people we trust, the people that we feel should have our backs and cover us, right? Sometimes we feel betrayed and we feel bitterness and resentment toward them. So we're going to see David here, a man that just should feel all of those things. And we're going to read two Psalms, Psalm 3 and Psalm 63, that David wrote during this time of his just running and trying to figure out who he can trust and who's going to help him, and just keeping himself and his army of followers that he has, how to keep all of them safe and healthy. So let's get into it. We will mainly be in 2 Samuel with those two Psalms sprinkled in. So we will start with 2 Samuel chapter 17. We're going to read verses 15 through 29, jump to Psalm 3, then Psalm 63, and we will finish up today with 2 Samuel chapter 18, verse 1 through chapter 19, verse 30. So, let's get going. Here we go. Hushai told Zadok and Abiathar, the priests, Ahithophel has advised Absalom and the elders of Israel to do such and such, but I have advised them to do so and so. Now send a message at once and tell David, do not spend the night at the fords in the wilderness. Cross over without fail, or the king and all the people with him will be swallowed up. Jonathan and Ahimaaz were staying at En-Rogel. A female servant was to go and inform them, and they were to go and tell King David, for they could not risk being seen entering the city. But a young man saw them and told Absalom. So the two of them left at once and went to the house of a man in Bahurim. He had a well in his courtyard, and they climbed down into it. His wife took a covering and spread it over the opening of the well and scattered grain over it. No one knew anything about it. When Absalom's men came to the woman at the house, they asked, "Where are Ahimaaz and Jonathan?" The woman answered them, "They crossed over the brook." The men searched but found no one, so they returned to Jerusalem. After they had gone, the two climbed out of the well and went to inform King David. They said to him, "Set out and cross the river at once. Ahithophel has advised such and such against you." So David and all the people with him set out and crossed the Jordan. By daybreak, no one was left who had not crossed the Jordan. When Ahithophel saw that his advice had not been followed, he saddled his donkey and set out for his house in his hometown. He put his house in order and then hanged himself. So he died and was buried in his father's tomb. David went to Mahanaim, and Absalom crossed the Jordan with all the men of Israel. Absalom had appointed Amasa over the army in place of Joab. Amasa was the son of Jether, an Ishmaelite who had married Abigail, the daughter of Nahash and sister of Zeruiah and mother of Joab. The Israelites and Absalom camped in the land of Gilead. When David came to Mahanaim, Shobi, son of Nahash, and Rabbah of the Ammonites, and Machir, son of Amiel from Lo-Debar, and Barzillai, the Gileadite from Rogelim, brought bedding and bowls and articles of pottery. They also brought wheat and barley, flour and roasted grain, beans and lentils, honey and curds, sheep and cheese from cow's milk for David and his people to eat. For they said, "The people have become exhausted and hungry and thirsty in the wilderness." Psalm 3, a psalm of David when he fled from his son Absalom. Lord, how many are my foes? How many rise up against me? Many are saying of me, God will not deliver him. Selah. But you, Lord, are a shield around me, my glory, the one who lifts my head high. I call out to the Lord, and he answers me from his holy mountain. Selah. I lie down and sleep. I wake again because the Lord sustains me. I will not fear though tens of thousands assail me on every side. Selah. Arise, Lord. Deliver me, my God. Strike all my enemies on the jaw. Break the teeth of the wicked. From the Lord comes deliverance. May your blessing be on your people. Selah. Psalm 63, a psalm of David, when he was in the desert of Judah. You, God, are my God. Earnestly I seek you. I thirst for you. My whole being longs for you in a dry, parched land where there is no water. I have seen you in the sanctuary and beheld your power and your glory. Because your love is better than life, my lips will glorify you. I will praise you as long as I live, and in your name I will lift up my hands. I will be fully satisfied as with the richest of foods. With singing lips my mouth will praise you. On my bed I remember you. I think of you through the watches of the night. Because you are my help. I sing in the shadow of your wings. I cling to you. Your right hand upholds me. Those who want to kill me will be destroyed. They will go down to the depths of the earth. They will be given over to the sword and become food for jackals. But the king will rejoice in God. All who swear by God will glory in him, while the mouths of liars will be silenced. 2 Samuel chapter 18. David mustered the men who were with him and appointed them over them commanders of thousands and commanders of hundreds. David sent out his troops, a third under the command of Joab, a third under Joab's brother Abishai, son of Zeruiah, and a third under Ittai the Gittite. The king told the troops, I myself will surely march out with you. But the men said, You must not go out. If we are forced to flee, they won't care about us. Even if half of us die, they won't care. But you are worth 10,000 of us. It would be better now for you to give us support from the city. The king answered, I will do whatever seems best to you. So the king stood by the gate, while his men marched out in units of hundreds and of thousands. The king commanded Joab, Abishai, and Ittai, Be gentle with the young man Absalom for my sake. And all the troops heard the king giving orders concerning Absalom to each of the commanders. David's army marched out of the city to fight Israel. The battle took place in the forest of Ephraim. There, Israel's troops were routed by David's men, and the casualties that day were great, 20,000 men. The battle spread out over the whole countryside, and the forest swallowed up more men that day than the sword. Now Absalom happened to meet David's men. He was riding his mule, and as the mule went under the thick branches of a large oak, Absalom's hair got caught in the tree. He was left hanging in midair, while the mule he was riding kept on going. When one of the men saw what had happened, he told Joab, I just saw Absalom hanging in the oak tree. Joab said to the man who had told him this, What? You saw him? Why didn't you strike him to the ground right there? Then I would have had to give you 10 shekels of silver and a warrior's belt. But the man replied, Even if 1,000 shekels were weighed out into my hands, I would not lay a hand on the king's son. In our hearing, the king commanded you and Abishai and Ittai, protect the young man Absalom for my sake. And if I had put my life in jeopardy, and nothing is hidden from the king, you would have kept your distance from me." Joab said, "I am not going to wait like this for you." So he took 3 javelins in his hand and plunged them into Absalom's heart, while Absalom was still alive in the oak tree. And 10 of Joab's armor-bearers surrounded Absalom, struck him, and killed him. Then Joab sounded the trumpet, and the troops stopped pursuing Israel, for Joab halted them. They took Absalom, threw him into a big pit in the forest, and piled up a large heap of rocks over him. Meanwhile, all the Israelites fled to their homes. During his lifetime, Absalom had taken a pillar and erected it in the king's valley as a monument to himself, for he thought, "I have no son to carry on the memory of my name." He named the pillar after himself, and it is called Absalom's monument to this day. Now, Ahimaaz, son of Zadok, said, "Let me run and take the news to the king, that the Lord has vindicated him by delivering him from the hand of his enemies." "You are not the one to take the news today," Joab told him. "You may take the news another time, but you must not do so today, because the king's son is dead." Then Joab said to a Cushite, "Go, tell the king what you have seen." The Cushite bowed down before Joab and ran off. Ahimaaz, son of Zadok, again said to Joab, "Come what may, please let me run behind the Cushite." But Joab replied, "My son, why do you want to go? You don't have any news that will bring you a reward." He said, "Come what may, I want to run." So Joab said, "Run." Then Ahimaaz ran by way of the plain and outran the Cushite. While David was sitting between the inner and outer gates, the watchman went up to the roof of the gateway by the wall. As he looked out, he saw a man running alone. The watchman called out to the king and reported it. The king said, "If he is alone, he must have good news." And the runner came closer and closer. Then the watchman saw another runner, and he called down to the gatekeeper, "Look, another man running alone." The king said, "He must be bringing good news too." The watchman said, "It seems to me that the first one runs like Ahimaaz, son of Zadok." "He is a good man," the king said. "He comes with good news." Then Ahimaaz called out to the king, "All is well." He bowed down before the king with his face to the ground and said, "Praise be to the Lord your God. He has delivered up those who have lifted their hands against my lord the king." The king asked, "Is the young man Absalom safe?" Ahimaaz answered, "I saw great confusion, just as Joab was about to send the king's servant and me, your servant, but I don't know what it was." The king said, "Stand aside and wait here." So he stepped aside and stood there. Then the Cushite arrived and said, "My lord the king, hear the good news. The Lord has vindicated you today by delivering you from the hand of all who rose up against you." The king asked the Cushite, "Is the young man Absalom safe?" The Cushite replied, "May the enemies of my lord the king, all who rise up to harm you, be like that young man." The king was shaken. He went up to the room over the gateway and wept. As he went, he said, "Oh, my son Absalom, my son Absalom, if only I had died instead of you. Oh, Absalom, my son, my son." Joab was told, "The king is weeping and mourning for Absalom," and for the whole army the victory that day was turned into mourning, because on that day the troops heard it said, "The king is grieving for his son." The men stole into the city that day as men steal in who are ashamed when they flee from battle. The king covered his face and cried aloud, "Oh, my son Absalom! Oh, Absalom, my son, my son!" Then Joab went into the house to the king and said, "Today you have humiliated all your men, who have just saved your life and the lives of your sons and daughters and the lives of your wives and concubines. You love those who hate you and hate those who love you. You made it clear today that the commanders and their men mean nothing to you. I see that you would be pleased if Absalom were alive today and all of us were dead. Now go out and encourage your men. I swear by the Lord that if you don't go out, not a man will be left with you by nightfall. This will be worse for you than all the calamities that have come on you from your youth till now." So the king got up and took his seat in the gateway. When the men were told, "This king is sitting in the gateway," they all came before him. Meanwhile, the Israelites had fled to their homes. Throughout the tribes of Israel, all the people were arguing among themselves, saying, "The king delivered us from the hand of our enemies. He is the one who rescued us from the hand of the Philistines. But now he has fled to the country to escape from Absalom. And Absalom, who we anointed to rule over us, has died in battle. So why do you say nothing about bringing the king back?" King David sent this message to Zadok and Abiathar, the priests. "Ask the elders of Judah, why should you be the last to bring the king back to his palace, since what is being said throughout Israel has reached the king at his quarters? You are my relatives, my own flesh and blood. So why should you be the last to bring back the king? And say to Amasa, are you not my own flesh and blood? May God deal with me, be it ever so severely, if you are not the commander of my army for life in place of Joab." He won over the hearts of the men of Judah, so that they were all of one mind. They sent word to the king, "Return, you and all your men." Then the king returned and went as far as the Jordan. Now the men of Judah had come to Gilgal to go out and meet the king and bring him across the Jordan. Shimei, son of Gera, and the Benjamite from Bahurim, hurried down with the men of Judah to meet King David. With him were 1,000 Benjamites, along with Ziba, the steward of Saul's household, and his 15 sons and 20 servants. They rushed to the Jordan, where the king was. They crossed at the ford to take the king's household over and to do whatever he wished. When Shimei, son of Gera, crossed the Jordan, he fell prostrate before the king and said to him, "May the Lord not hold me guilty. Do not remember how your servant did wrong on the day my lord the king left Jerusalem. May the king put it out of his mind, for I, your servant, know that I have sinned. But today I have come here as the first from the tribes of Joseph, to come down and meet my lord the king." Then Abishai, son of Zeruiah, said, "Shouldn't Shimei be put to death for this? He cursed the Lord's anointed." David replied, "What does this have to do with you, you sons of Zeruiah? What right do you have to interfere? Should anyone be put to death in Israel today? Don't I know that today I am king over Israel?" So the king said to Shimei, "You shall not die." And the king promised him on oath. Mephibosheth, Saul's grandson, also went down to meet the king. He had not taken care of his feet, or trimmed his mustache, or washed his clothes from the day the king left until the day he returned safely. When he came from Jerusalem to meet the king asked him, "Why didn't you go with me, Mephibosheth?" He said, "My lord the king, since I your servant am lame, I said, I will have my donkey saddled and will ride on it so I can go with the king. But Ziba my servant betrayed me, and he has slandered your servant to my lord the king. My lord the king is like an angel of God, so do whatever you wish. All my grandfather's descendants deserved nothing but death from my lord the king, but you gave your servant a place among those who eat at your table. So what right do I have to make any more appeals to the king?" The king said to him, "What say more? I order you and Ziba to divide the land." Mephibosheth said to the king, "Let him take everything, now that my lord the king has returned home safely." So I love the Psalms. I love when David writes, because it's just such a beautiful cry out to God. So remember that there's an army of about 10,000 that is coming after King David and all those that support him. And so that's the cry of Psalm 3 is King David is crying out for how many, like he just feels surrounded. It's like that song, I may be surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. And that's kind of what he shows us here. Like he is surrounded. He is being hunted down yet again. And yet he surrounds himself and calls out to God for God to cover him and protect him and give him peace. So it's just a beautiful reminder that even in the middle of the storm, we can cry out. And just like Jesus calmed the storms for the disciples in the waters, in the boat, we can call on that same power of God. And although the waves may be raging against us, we can feel peace, even if it's just for a moment, before we get overcome by waves again and we have to call out yet again. I'm sure you have been there too. And then you have to cry out again and again and again to stay in the peace that God so badly wants us to have. So there's some things that we want to notice about Joab. Now, Joab is like King David's right-hand man, and he does some good things here. He basically grabs King David and shakes him and says, Stop mourning for this son of yours that came up against you and all of the others, like basically all of Israel, and go congratulate your warriors. Would you rather all of us have died and Absalom had survived? Because that's how everybody feels, King David. Let's go. Get up. The morning time is over. And King David was good. He listened to Joab. We have to remember that Joab is the one that killed Absalom. Now, it doesn't say in Scripture, at least I didn't catch it, whether King David knows this, whether that tidbit of information is actually given to King David. So, I don't know. I can't imagine that he was told, because I feel like if Joab had come in, at least if it was me, and said, get up, I think some sort of confrontation, some sort of dialogue would have occurred between the two of them. Like, hold on a second, we've got some air to clear here. So I'm not sure what all happened there, but this is 2 murders now that are on Joab's hands. We've got the murder of Abner, and now the murder of Absalom. And unfortunately, he doesn't stop there. So we will read further. Joab is kind of one of those, he does whatever he wants most of the time. Now he does what the king wants, so it makes it seem like he's following God, right? But he also has self-centered tendencies where he just kind of goes out and says, well, I'll take care of Absalom myself, and goes ahead and does that, and then inflicts his sin upon others. Remember, there was 10 other soldiers that came and partook in the murder of Absalom. So sin breeds. It just breeds more sin, and if we allow ourselves to be around it, to see it, to witness it, and not stand firm and walk away from it, we can get wrapped up in it and choose to be a part of it instead of being a part of the solution and the right way of life. In 2 Samuel chapter 18, verses 12 through 14, I don't think the young man has a name, but there's a man that came and tells Joab that Absalom is caught in a tree. His hair gets caught in a tree, and Joab is upset with him that he didn't take his life. And the man calls Joab on his hypocrisy. The man says, well, for sure, if I had done that and come to you and said that, you would have turned on me. And he is 100% right. We know that by knowing the character of Joab. And then that's when he turns and goes and takes care of it himself. So it's just, yet another reflection, yet another demonstration of how important it is that we surround ourselves with not just good people, but with godly people. People who serve God, who follow God, who seek God every day in their lives. And there are people out there in the world that need that. They need us to be that light for them, but we have to be careful that we don't allow their darkness to overtake our light. So it's a delicate balance, and I pray for each and every one of you to be able to find that balance and to call on God and help you with that balance of being able to help people, but also protect your heart, guard your heart, as it is said in Scripture. All right. Well, this was a good reading. David is back. King David is back in his kingdom as King. Israel and Judah are united yet again, even if it is just for a time, for a short time. So, Father, thank you. Thank you for the words of King David, the reminder that even in the storm we can trust you, that your presence, your provision, and your protection is there when we cry out to you in our desire for you. No matter where we are, our desire is for you, because you are the only thing, the only person, the only provider, the only object that can fulfill our heart's desires. You made us that way. God, you made us in your image to have a connection and relationship with you. Thank you for just your miraculous creation in us, God. And thank you for constantly coming after us, nudging our hearts so that we can turn and draw closer to you and to grow in a relationship with you, God. God, help us to trust you. That even in the midst of the storm, help us to trust in your protection and in your peace, that it is attainable, that we are not meant to go and do life on our own. God, help us to just remember that you created us to rely on you, to need you, to call out to you, to seek you. We want to be people that run to you, God. That yes, we may run away from our problems, but we are running away from them and bringing them to you, because you are the one that can cover them, that can clean them, that can solve them with uprightness. Father, that brings us hope. That brings us hope in this dark, dark world we live in. Oh, the light of your hope is what we choose to walk by, to live by, and to hand off to other people that you bring into our lives. Thank you for the opportunity to share you, to live by you, and to share your glory in all of our choosings every day. And help us to radiate your light, to radiate your goodness, to radiate your peace, your love, God, that when people see us, they actually see you, that it's not us, it's not our name to be glorified, but it is you. We love you, and to you be all the credit of everything in our lives that has been accomplished. In your name we pray. Amen. Friends, I pray that today you have a moment where you can reflect on all that God has brought you through. And you can have just a moment of wild expectations of what God still has yet to do in your life. Y'all, if you are listening to this recording, that means you have breath in your lungs, you have blood flowing through your body. That means God is not done with you yet. He still has a purpose for you. He still is chasing you, loving you, and drawing you closer in relationship to Him. So just envelop yourself in that, in the knowledge that God's not done with you. You still have purpose and value and lots to give to the world around you. So get out there and go do that in a godly way. I wish you a wonderful and most blessed day today. Happy Thursday, everybody. Until tomorrow, I'm Bria Doan. This has been Vitjor. Bye, guys.